Hi, third graders. I hope you're doing well. I miss you. I know it's only been one day that we haven't been together, but it sure feels a lot longer than that. I hope that you had a nice weekend and that you were able to hopefully get outside with some of the nicer weather. And I wanted to come on here and I thought, how cool would it be if I created my own YouTube, like some of you already have at your home, and just could be a place where I could come on while we're not together and maybe read aloud to you. I know that's one of our favorite things that we do together is during some time during the day, whether it's reading our current read aloud from our chapter book or finding a fun picture book and reading that and sharing it with you. And I thought maybe I would do that. And maybe while you're home, you could find some time during the day, whether it maybe is first thing in the morning or maybe after you have your lunch, or maybe even when you're getting ready to go to bed, where you could have some read aloud time with Mrs. Tallon. And I just want you to know that even though we're not together, I'm still constantly thinking of you, and I hope you're doing well. And I hope that some of you can keep in touch and send me some pictures so I can see some of the great learning that you're doing and exploring outside and having fun with your family. And so that's what I started here for us. So I thought I wanted to bring home, I went to school today to create some of the at-home learning packets for you to work on. And I went to our easel and I went and grabbed our current read aloud, which we're absolutely loving. And it's The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And we're about a little more than halfway through the book. And I thought, why don't I come on here and I'll read a chapter or two, and maybe you can listen to it sometime today or tomorrow. And then I'll come on again tomorrow and read a few more chapters until we finish it. And don't worry, I brought home another read aloud book too that I'll start sharing. So here we go. We actually are on chapter 16. And just to catch you up a little bit, if you remember, the last thing that we read was Edward was now, from our last chapter, he was hooked up on this stick. This lady found him. She now was referring to Edward as Clyde, and she was hoping that Edward was now going to help get all the birds and crows away from her garden area. And Edward was hanging up there, and the crows and birds were picking at his ears and picking at his body. And all of a sudden, the last chapter ended where this time when she came back, she brought a little boy with her. So that must be what that picture is of that boy in chapter 16. So here we go. "Bryce," said the old woman, "get away from that rabbit. I ain't paying you to stand here and just stare." "Yes, ma'am," said Bryce. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and continued to look up at Edward. The boy's eyes were brown, with flecks of gold shining in through them. "Hey," he whispered to Edward. A crow settled on Edward's head, and the boy flapped his arms and shouted, "Get on, get!" And the bird spread his wings and flew away. "Bryce!" shouted the old woman. "Ma'am," said Bryce, "get away from that rabbit. You do your work or I ain't going to say it again." "Yes'm," said Bryce, and he wiped his hand across from the back of his nose. "I'll be back to get you," he said to Edward. The rabbit spent the day hanging by his ears, baking in the hot sun, watching the old woman and Bryce weed and hoe the garden. Wherever the woman wasn't looking, and whenever she wasn't, Bryce would raise his hand and give Edward a wave. The birds kept circling over Edward's head, laughing at him. What was it like to have wings, Edward wondered. If he had wings, when he was tossed overboard, he would have not sunk to the bottom of the sea. Instead, he would have flown in the opposite direction, up into the deep, bright blue sky. And when Lolly took him to the dump, he would have flown out of that garbage and followed her and landed on her head, holding on with his sharp claws. And on the train, when the man kicked him, Edward would not have fallen to the ground. Instead, he would have risen up and sat on the top of the train, laughing at the man. Caw, caw, caw! And in the late afternoon, Bryce and the old lady left the field. Bryce winked at Edward as he walked past him, and one of the crows lightened on Edward's shoulder and tapped him with his beak at Edward's china face, reminding the rabbit with each tap that he had no wings. That not only could he not fly, he could not move on his own at all in any way. Dusk was descending over the field, and then came true darkness. A bird was singing out over him. It was the saddest sound that Edward had ever heard. And then came another song, and it was a hum of a harmonica. Bryce stepped out of the shadow of the darkness. "Hey," he said to Edward. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and then played another bit of the song on his harmonica. "I bet you didn't think I'd come back for you, but I came here. I came to save you." Too late, thought Edward as Bryce climbed the pole and worked at the wires that were tied around his wrists. "I'm nothing but a hollow rabbit." Too late, thought Edward as Bryce was now pulling the nails out of his ears. "I'm only a doll made of china." But when the last nail was out, he fell forward into Bryce's arms. The rabbit felt this rush of relief, and the feeling of relief was followed by one big joy. Perhaps, he thought, maybe it's not too late after all for me to be saved. Now we have chapter 17. And this looks like a picture of a shed. So let's see what this chapter is about. Bryce slung Edward over his shoulder and he started to walk. "I come to get you for Sarah Ruth," Bryce said. "You don't know Sarah Ruth. She's my sister. She's sick. She had her baby doll out that was made out of china before, and she loved that baby doll. But he broke it." "He broke it?" "He was drunk and he stepped on that baby's head and smashed it into a million pieces. And the pieces were so small that I couldn't put them back together. I couldn't, and I tried and tried." At this point in the story, Bryce stopped walking and shook his head and wiped his nose with the back of his hand again. "Sarah Ruth ain't had nothing to play with ever since. He won't buy her nothing. He says she don't need a thing. He says she don't need nothing because she ain't gonna live. But he don't know that." Bryce started to walk again. "He don't know," he said. Who's he was not clear to Edward. What was clear was that he was being taken to a child to make up for the loss of a doll. A doll. How Edward loathed dolls. And to be thought of as a likely replacement for a doll kind of offended him. But still, it was, he had to admit, a highly preferable alternative to than hanging from his ears from a post. The house in which Bryce and Sarah Ruth lived was so small and crooked that Edward did not believe at first that it was a house. He mistook it. He mistook it for instead of maybe a chicken coop. Inside, there were 2 beds and a kerosene lamp and not much else. Bryce led Edward at the foot of the bed and then lit the lamp. "Sarah," Bryce whispered. "Sarah Ruth, you gotta wake up now, honey. I brung you something." And he took the harmonica out of his pocket and played the beginning of a simple melody. The little girl sat up in her bed and immediately started to cough. Bryce took his hand on her back. "That's all right," he told her. "That's okay." She was young, maybe 4 years old, and she had white blonde hair, and even in the poor light of the lamp, Edward could see that her eyes were the same and had the same gold flecks of brown as Bryce's. "That's right," said Bryce. "You go on, cough it up." Sarah Ruth obliged him. She coughed and coughed and coughed. And on the wall of the cabin, the kerosene light lamp casted this trembling shadow of this hunched-over body that was small. The coughing was the saddest sound that Edward had ever heard, sadder even more than that bird he heard out in the field. Finally, Sarah Ruth stopped. Bryce said, "You want to see what I brung you?" Sarah Ruth nodded. "You gotta close your eyes." So the girl closed her eyes, and Bryce picked up Edward and held him so that he was standing straight like a soldier at the end of the bed. "All right, now you can open them." Sarah Ruth opened her eyes, and Bryce moved Edward's china legs and china arms so it looked as though he were dancing. Sarah Ruth laughed and clapped her hands. "Rabbit," she said. "He's for you, honey," said Bryce. Sarah Ruth looked first at Edward and then Bryce, and then back at Edward again. Her eyes were wide and disbelieving. "He's yours." "Mine?" Sarah Ruth, Edward was soon to discover, rarely said more than even one word at a time. Words, at least several of them strung together, made her cough. She limited herself. She said only what needed to be said. "Yours," said Bryce. "I got him special for you." This knowledge provoked another fit of coughing in Sarah Ruth, and she hunched over again. When the fit was done, she uncurled herself and held out her arms. "That's right," said Bryce. He handed Edward to her. "Baby," said Sarah Ruth. She rocked Edward back and forth and stared down at him and smiled. Never in his life had Edward been cradled like a baby. Abilene had not done it, nor did Nellie, and most certainly Bull had not. It was a singular sensation to be held so gently, and yet so fiercely, to be stared down at and with so much love. Edward felt the whole in his china body flooded with warmth. "You gonna give him a name, honey?" Bryce asked. "Jangles," said Sarah Ruth, without even taking her eyes off of Edward. "Jangles, huh? That's a good name. I like that name." Bryce patted Sarah Ruth on the head, and she continued to stare down at Edward. "Hush," she said to Edward, as she rocked him back and forth. "From the minute I have seen him," said Bryce, "I knew he belonged to you. I said to myself, that rabbit there, that's for Sarah Ruth for sure." "Jangles," murmured Sarah Ruth. And here's a picture of Sarah Ruth holding on to Edward, or as what she now calls him, Jangles. Outside the cabin, thunder cracked, and then came the sound of rain falling on the tin roof. Sarah Ruth rocked Edward back and forth, and Bryce took out his harmonica and started to play, making his song keep rhythm with the rain. And tomorrow I'll share chapter 18, which looks like it has a box with some buttons. So third graders, I hope you enjoyed our read aloud. Sure is getting interesting with Edward having so many different owners. And if you're watching this with your family, you'll have to catch them up and let them know all of the journey so far that Edward has been on. Maybe you can let them know, and maybe you can even get this book sometime and read the beginning part to your family. So I hope you are having a great day, and if you're watching this at night, I hope you have sweet dreams, and I'll be posting another read aloud tomorrow. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.